Why, hello there, YouTube, and welcome to A History of Who. I am Davros, and I'm a Whovian. And today this episode, we're going to be talking about one-time Doctor Paul McGann. Yes. So, 1996. The show had been off there for about 7 years now by this point, and it seemed it would not be revived until the BBC had a bit of a thing, a crossover with like Fox Network, and decided to come together to make a one off, hopeful feature pilot for a possible revival. Yes, for one night only, Doctor Who returned to our screens. And it aired on the 12th of May 1996 in Canada, the 14th of May 1996 in the USA, and then we got it on the 27th of May 1996. So in this one, we see Doctor Who return with a new Doctor, but also an old Doctor. Now, the show had been cancelled where Sylvester McCoy played the Doctor, and even though he thought maybe they should have started the movie with Paul McGann, and then if a series would come of it, have a flashback episode where we see him regenerate, but they thought, no, we want him back. Anyway, Sylvester McCoy, he did feel that he owed it to the fans and to himself to come back and do an on-screen regeneration. So I like that he handed over the torch on screen where we see the regeneration happen. Now, in 1996, I was 5 years old. I never really heard of Doctor Who, but I remember watching that one scene, the regeneration, and it scared the hell out of me. That face morph, the lightning, resembling that of like Frankenstein, and then the Doctor wondering who he is, then we see the Master regenerate into a new body, etc. That was very unnerving for my 5-year-old self, and it would be 10 years before I would watch it again. But looking back at that now, that was probably my first real taste of Doctor Who. So anyway, with Sylvester McCoy only being in the first act of this movie, they needed a successor. And who did they get? Well, believe it or not, the role of the Eighth Doctor was originally offered to Tim Curry, but he turned it down as he was working with the Jim Henson Company in Disney doing Muppet Treasure Island, and he chose to do that. So then Sylvester McCoy suggested a friend of his, Paul McGann, who was quite the well-known actor. He had a few film credits to his name and thought he would make a good Doctor. And he did. He put on a wig and Edwardian gear and looked somewhat like a young William Hartnell, if you will. And of course, this was a part American production, and was set in America on New Year's Eve 1999, where the Eighth Doctor's first task was to save the universe at the end of the 20th century, as the Master, who stood trial by the Daleks, used his remains and hijacked the TARDIS, and then the body of the paramedic, Bruce, that took the Doctor to the hospital, all to try and use the last bit of his life cycle to try and rig the Doctor and take his remaining regenerations, even if it meant destroying the universe itself. We had a one-off companion, Grace Holloway, played by Daphne Ashbrook, and a part companion, Chang Lee, played by Yeely Trusso. But we had Eric Roberts play the Master, who was probably the only non-British, only American actor to play the Master. And we all know Eric Roberts as quite the actor. He is the older brother of Julia Roberts and the father of Emma Roberts. In case you didn't know, probably do. But yeah, for one night only, for 90 minutes, Doctor Who returned to our screens. And it was greatly received in the UK, but not so much in the USA. I feel that, Doctor Who is a British thing, leave it to the Brits to do it. And this was, like I say, greatly received in the UK. It had updated visual effects with CGI for the first time, which is kind of dated now, but still, Doctor Who in digital. And this was meant to be the feature pilot for a series. And did we get that series, a revival? No, we didn't. It would take a good 9 more years before we see Doctor Who return properly again, where it would be British. But Paul McGann, he did say that he did sign a dotted line to do a series, which never came about. But still, the TV movie was thrown in the canon, and Doctor Who did continue in media. The Eighth Doctor returned in graphic novels and comics, and eventually, audio came around. So, in the 90s, they thought, Doctor Who, if it's not going to come back on TV, let's bring it back on radio and get audio adventures from all the classic remaining Doctors. And Paul McGann, he started doing his own audio series where his adventures continued, where he had various companions. And Paul McGann said that they could do things on radio that you just wouldn't get away with on TV. And yeah, so Paul McGann continued playing the Doctor in Big Finish audio, and I believe he still does to this very day with other former Doctor actors, recording their lines in a recording booth and then sending it off to Big Finish, who still do that to this day, and do that with classic Doctors right up until the 10th Doctor, I believe. Do correct me in the comments if I'm wrong there, if they've started doing like the 11th and the 12th and 13th and that. So yes, 1997 came along with 1998, and then 1999, Comic Relief did a comic special where they parodied it, where Rowan Atkinson played alternate Ninth Doctor, called The Curse of Fatal Death, with Jonathan Pryce as the Master, and he would go out throughout the rest of his cycle in it, with turning into Richard E. Grant, then Jim Broadbent, then Hugh Grant, and then Joanna Lumley, just as a gag, have a woman at the end, which was, again, a spoof, but something for the Who fans. And that was just for Comic Relief 1999. So we then entered the next century, the millennium, 2000. And again, Doctor Who was a thing of the past, 2001, 2002. But then 2003 came along, where DVDs were starting to take off. And they started to, for the 40th anniversary, release classic serials on DVD as well. Also, UK Gold, who is a network that airs classic shows ranging from the BBC to ITV to Channel 4 and 5, and even now its own original creations and stuff. They had a Doctor Who marathon hosted by K9, where all the cast and crew from the past looked back fondly at the show, and even aired classic serials throughout. And yeah, even though Doctor Who was still off air, people celebrated its 40th year. And during that time, there were rumours of Queer as Folk writer and Casanova writer Russell T Davies. Rumours of him saying he plans to revive the show in 2004. Only being rumours. But then in 2004, production began. And in 2005 of that year, in March, around 20 years ago now, Doctor Who would have a new beginning.